The Switch 2 released like 8 months ago, and I still have no idea what the purpose of buying one would be. This sentiment has been running rampant in the Nintendo community and overall gaming community since the Nintendo Switch 2 launched, and I think it's a shame. I think it is a complete and total shame that we are to this point. We are to the point where we are so spoiled as Nintendo fans from the Nintendo Switch generation, from what we can expect to see from a console's very first year, that we have no idea how good we actually have it. We've been talking about all of these big games that we're missing out on. We're missing out on a big 3D Mario, a big 3D Zelda, a big Smash Bros, like these big franchises that people continually talk about over and over and over again. On this channel, I have said before, those games are coming. We need to be patient. They are going to come. This generation will not pass without a 3D Mario. I promise you. But what we have right now is something different. We don't have those franchises that the Nintendo Switch brought us within the first couple years of that system's lifespan. We have other franchises that honestly do make up for the lack of those other ones. We have at least 3 system sellers on this console, at least 3 in my opinion. Mario Kart World, that is just factually a system seller. We can argue all day long, up and down, whether or not Mario Kart is a good game, whether or not World has flaws, whether it's better or worse than 8 Deluxe. Call it whatever you like. It is a system seller through and through. 8 Deluxe proved that on the Nintendo Switch. 8 itself proved that on the Wii U. Mario Kart games always and forever will be system sellers. People go to the stores to buy Mario Kart and play it with their friends and family. It's the type of game that if you have a Nintendo console, you have to get it. It's just a must. The big single player experience that I believe that we have on the Nintendo Switch 2 is Donkey Kong Bonanza. That is another system seller that cannot be taken away from anyone. That is a game that is massive in scope and scale. The voxel technology that these developers from the Mario Odyssey team were really so excited about that they just talked about at GDC. They talked a little bit more about that game and its history and how it was made and how it started off as like a Goomba with 2 big hands just destroying stuff in that Mario Odyssey engine. They moved it over to Donkey Kong Bonanza and decided to try and work it on the Switch, but they knew it didn't have the graphical capabilities, it didn't have the power that it needed to do that. So they moved it over to the Switch 2, and it's been working in development since Odyssey's release. This game was supposed to be a Switch 1 game, but of course they moved it over to the Switch 2, and then we got it in the launch year of the Nintendo Switch 2. Within the first 2 months, we got 2 system sellers, a big Mario Kart World game that you can play forever with your friends and is so much fun to play over and over online, and a brand new single player experience that's more action adventure than 3D platformer, but a 3D environment game like Donkey Kong Bonanza. Those games are phenomenal. The third and final system seller that I believe the Nintendo Switch 2 has and just got is Pokemon Piccopia. This game is a Pokemon spin-off. Pokemon spin-offs don't tend to sell more than about 5 million units. Pokemon Piccopia is a game that I initially saw and thought it had promise. I had never played a Pokemon game before Fire Red. That was the game I picked up. I played it for a few hours. It was fun. It was okay. And I got a little bit bored of it and I decided to drop it. So I'm probably not going to be a big fan of those older games. But Piccopia grabbed my interest enough. The hype was big enough to where I cared about it. Even prior to getting Fire Red and even knowing that game existed, I was on this channel saying, this game looks good. Don't sleep on Piccopia. Pokemon Piccopia, in its first 4 days, has sold 2.2 million units. 2.2 million units in 4 days on this console, the Nintendo Switch 2. It is an exclusive, a console with just 17 million sold already. The install base is not as big as the Switch, not even close to it, and yet it has sold 2.2 million in 4 days. This game has become the next Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I didn't think it was possible to reach those same heights, but Piccopia is doing it. Y'all, the amount of people that I have seen, it is unreal, that have actually gone to the stores and bought a system specifically to play Pokemon Piccopia. People who had no interest in the Switch prior, who were waiting for Wind and Wave, who were waiting for all these other games. This game brought them out. This game made them buy this console, and it is phenomenal. It is tied with Resident Evil Stinkin' Requiem at 89 on Metacritic, the highest of the year. It's tied with Requiem, and it is in the Game of the Year conversation. Piccopia is not a game that we can sleep on any longer. It's not a game that we can sit around and act like it's just another Pokemon spinoff. It's just something else that they farted out. This is a great, game. This is a truly exceptional Switch 2 exclusive. Pokemon Piccopia is pushing boundaries as to what a Pokemon game can and should be. Graphically speaking, it's not super duper impressive. In fact, I would say it looks like a Switch 1 game more than a Switch 2 game. I can understand why they wanted it to run on the Switch 2 and why they made it an exclusive to that console. There are so many things going on, and there can be all types of bits of blocks and stuff that you break that can stay in that one area for the whole time, and that does take processing power, so it does make sense. But at the same time, it's not even all that impressive. The core gameplay is simply what is drawing people in. The idea of a cozy Animal Crossing type game mixed with Minecraft and mixed with Dragon Quest Builders. Dragon Quest Builders was a huge inspiration for this game, and you can tell in the art style, in the way that these blocks are placed in the world. Piccopia is really a poster child for what it means to give your big franchise to another studio, or at least work in cahoots with them, because the Pokemon Company is in cahoots right now with Koei Tecmo, the studio that also worked on Hyrule Warriors with the Zelda team, but it's also that same Dragon Quest Builders team that is working on this. And Dragon Quest Builders is a phenomenal IP, a great franchise that people have adored. It just wasn't big enough to reach a modern audience, to reach more of that mainstream platform. Put it on Pokemon, give it a Pokemon flair, make it to where your Ditto can have all these random abilities, get all your Pokemon in this game, and boom, you have yourself an incredible Switch 2 exclusive that is worth buying a console for, that is literally worth going to the store and buying it simply to play this one game that you could spend the entirety of your year playing and not get bored of. You could play your whole year of nothing but Piccopia and still be intrigued by this world, still have more content to interact with. And you want to know the cool thing? We're not even done yet, because the hard part about comparing the Switch to the Switch 2 that I find to be somewhat of an internal conflict is the idea of the Switch launching in March and the Switch 2 having launched in June. The first year of the Switch is mostly thought of between March to December. We had Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey in October, Xenoblade towards the end of the year, ARMS, Splatoon 2, Mario and Rabbids. We had some great exclusives. But most people don't think about 2018. They don't think about that full calendar year from March to March. They think about that first March to December. Now I think a lot of people are trying to do the same thing, but you simply can't do it again. You cannot do from June to December, because that's only 6 months. That's not the first year, that's the first half year. So if we are truly doing the first year of the Nintendo Switch 2, we're not done yet. We have had 6 straight months of great games, and then about 6 more months ahead of us of great games. Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. We had Kirby Air Riders, Hyrule Warriors. We're having Tomodachi Life next month, Pokemon Piccopia now. Last month, the best Mario Tennis game I've ever played, probably the best sports game that Mario has ever had, Mario Tennis Fever, and we keep getting more. Yoshi is getting a release date in May. Yoshi's and the Mysterious Book, it looks phenomenal. It looks different than Crafted World, which was kind of like a rinse and repeat, easy 2D platformer. Yoshi's Mysterious Book looks different than that. It looks relatively engaging. It looks like something that you're going to be collecting different creatures, and I don't know exactly how in-depth that system is, but it is not simply going left to right and just getting to the end of the goal. You are trying to investigate and journal these different creatures that you encounter. And for all of my gripes and frustrations with Switch 2 editions, that is another reason to buy this console. That is something else to keep you engaged with. And yes, there are plenty of problems, and I would encourage you to go watch my video, click on the right corner for that to see why I think that Switch 2 editions are problematic and what we could do to fix them. But there are still undeniably more pieces of content in those games that are worth playing, particularly with the upcoming Mario Wonder that is adding in so much content to not only the base game, which is all I've been asking for with these Switch 2 editions. Give us more base game content. We're getting Rosalina, we're getting a new power-up, we're getting boss fights with the Koopalings that look amazing. We're also getting that Bella Bell Park stuff and all those other multiplayer challenges. But even in the case of something like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, with those Switch 2 editions, simply having those up to 4K 60 FPS to run perfectly on the Switch 2, that's reason enough for me to want to get back into those games, and they did. I did. Those were great experiences. Not to mention, we have ourselves the GameCube NSO expansion pass that is exclusive to the Nintendo Switch 2. If you want to play classics like Luigi's Mansion, if you want to be able to play Fire Emblem for the first time on a Nintendo hardware since it initially released, you can do that. The Nintendo Switch 2 is not devoid of games. It is not a platform that one can simply say there are no games, simply say what this one guy on Twitter did and say, oh, you know, why would I buy it? It's been out for 8 months and you've not done anything yet. That is simply absurd to say, and incorrect and wrong. I would even go as far to say, as this year is absolutely rivaling the first 365 of the Nintendo Switch. Without a doubt. Of course, Breath of the Wild was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to experience a game that truly pushes the medium forward, innovates in a way that no one expected, and changes a series that is so iconic forever. Mario Odyssey returned to the sandbox roots. We had Mario Kart 8 Deluxe refine that game to its core, make it even better, run better, more characters, more costumes, more DLC inclusivity. Splatoon 2 was a great push forward from the series. I see a lot of people saying that Splatoon and Splatoon 2 were so similar and felt like it was just a bare bones port, but I totally disagree with that. From day one, that game looked, played, and felt way better. Yes, I will never downplay that is the best console release year that we will probably ever see. But here we are in the year of the Switch 2, with a brand new, genre-defining, pushing Mario Kart game that maybe didn't stick the landing perfectly in the open world, but the gameplay itself is absolute peak. Donkey Kong Bonanza brings back the series with an absolute bang and an incredible first-party game, an incredible first-player game. And what was the biggest part of the Nintendo Switch that core Nintendo fans loved? It was the fact that dreams came true. On the Nintendo Switch, your dream could come true. If you wanted your favorite series that had been dormant for a while or the Wii U didn't create a game of, you could hope for it on the Switch, and it ended up coming true. Fire Emblem came back in a big way, was a huge resurgence for the series in a way that people hadn't seen since the 3DS, which wasn't too far back at that point, but Three Houses was an amazing game. You have stuff like Animal Crossing, which had Amiibo Festival on the Wii U, and people didn't know if we were going to get a standard Animal Crossing game back ever again. Even stuff like Xenoblade Chronicles. You have yourself Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii. We didn't know if we were ever going to get it. Operation Rainfall helped bring that over. Then we got Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and 3. This series came back in a big way. The return to style of the 3D sandbox format, a big 3D open area, open zone Zelda game. Dreams came true on the Nintendo Switch. On the Switch 2, we are already seeing the same thing happening, and no one wants to talk about it because the only thing that people are caring about right now is that there's no 3D Mario, and that there's no big 3D Zelda, and that all these huge franchises aren't here yet. They're gonna come. Just please be patient. Let's pay attention to the amazing games that are coming out right now. The Switch 2 is making dreams come true already. Kirby Air Ride was a game on the GameCube that so many people loved at the time. It is a core Nintendo game that only a very select few people would ever be super interested in seeing a sequel towards. Not a ton of people were begging for a new game, but I have definitely seen over the life of the Switch and the generation of people asking for that game to come back, for them to do some kind of new iteration of it. And of course, myself and many other people probably looked at that and scoffed and was like, no, they're not going to bring back this random game that sold barely 1 million on the GameCube, if that. Then boom, not only do they bring it back, not only is Kirby Air Riders one of the big Switch 2 exclusives that you can get, but Sakurai, Masahiro Sakurai stinking himself, is the one to have resurrected it and used the entire Smash Brothers team to pour his entire heart and soul into making this game perfect, into making it the best thing it could possibly be, and then say, you know what, we did everything we wanted to do. No DLC. We're not even going to make it something where you have to continue to be invested in free content and it's not finished from day one. No, they did it, and it's so great. We have not had a 3D Donkey Kong since the N64 people, and Donkey Kong fans have not had a brand new game since Tropical Freeze. We got Donkey Kong Bonanza. Dreams came true. I'm sorry, it's been a year now. I don't want to spoil this, so if you've yet to finish Bonanza, turn away, but King K. Rool was in that game, and he came back for the first time since those early 90s, 80s games. This may not be a Switch 2 exclusive, but it is almost certainly going to get a Switch 2 patch. Rhythm Heaven Groove is a game that we have been begging for years. Tomodachi Life is a game that people have been dying to have back, and it is coming. Nintendo has not forgotten what it means to make their fan base happy, how to bring back core games that have not been brought back in a while. And they're doing it, and they're doing it well. And the schedule is so full. I look over at the PlayStation 5, and I really don't mean to bag on Sony in all these videos all the time. I really don't have a lot of beef with Sony. I have a PS5 myself, but Sony and the PlayStation is in a bit of a pickle right now because they don't have a lot of games coming. They truly do not have many first-party games that are exclusive to the PS5, are a good reason to buy the console. God of War Ragnarok is great, but it's a sequel, right? It's not something brand new. It's not an IP that is pushing the medium forward. It's just a reason to get it because it's fine. And oh wait, it's also on the PS4. We got The Last of Us Part 2, but that was also on the PS4. A big game in the launch year of the PS5 was Ghost of Tsushima that also came out on the PS4. The PS5 does not have a lot of big games that are exclusive to that console. I would wager to say the Switch 2 already has equal to, if not more, first-party games worth getting the console for than the PS5 does in its 6 years on the market. That's kind of embarrassing, in my opinion. That's just simply incredibly stupid on Sony's part to not get these games out there. And of course, Xbox, is there even gonna be an Xbox coming soon? Like the Project Helix thing that they're working on is supposed to be a hybrid between a console and a PC where you can just boot up Windows right on it, which is going to be directly competing with Valve's new Steam machine. And I don't even know if Xbox is going to be in the market anymore. What we could be looking at in 10 years down the road is simply Sony and the PlayStation versus Nintendo and whatever they're doing next. But if we look around and we see what all these other consoles are doing, what these other companies are partaking in, Nintendo is clearly at the top in terms of releases. You may not be a big fan of all these games, and that's okay. If you are wanting a 3D Mario or a 3D Zelda or a Smash, and you're waiting to buy the console for that, that's fine. But what I am here to say today is that it is wrong and it is totally absurd to say the Switch 2 doesn't have any system sellers, it doesn't have any big games, and it doesn't have games, period. Because it seems every single month there are at least 1 or 2 big games or some first-party experiences for us to indulge in. I already feel a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of content that I have consumed in the past couple months, just in the first 3 months of the 2026 Nintendo Switch 2 season. Like, we have had Xenoblade Chronicles X, I went back to that for the Switch 2 edition. Mario Tennis Fever that I have already spent dozens of hours in, and I'm top 300 by the way in. Now I'm playing Piccopia, and it feels like I have already played this for about 10 plus hours, and I've barely scratched the surface on what's to come. That game is so worth its $70 price tag. It is so great. It is a Game of Year contender. It's rivaling Animal Crossing, like I said at the beginning. Like, I never thought we would see a game like this again, but here it is. It is a cultural phenomenon, and it didn't even need a COVID virus. It didn't even need a shutdown or a lockdown to get as popular as it is getting. It's simply that good. Tomodachi Life is coming next month. Yoshi is coming in May. Like, can we just calm down on needing Nintendo Directs all the time, on all these things happening? Maybe you aren't interested in the games coming out. Maybe you don't think any of the games that have been mentioned today are worth it for you. That's fine. But the problem is, you're probably not a big Nintendo fan then. If you're not into Kirby, if you're not into Mario Kart or Donkey Kong or Mario Tennis or Hyrule Warriors or all of these other millions of games that Nintendo have been putting out and publishing from their first party IP, you're not a Nintendo fan. If you don't like these games, you're just not. There is a big difference between a fan of a series and being a fan of a company. If you are a fan of Pokemon and you only play Pokemon games, and maybe you'll indulge in a Breath of the Wild here and there or an Odyssey here and there, you're not a fan of Nintendo. You're a fan of Pokemon, and you like other games sometimes. I personally wouldn't say I'm a PlayStation fan, even though I have a PlayStation 5 and a ton of PlayStation games. I'm currently working through Persona 3 Reload, and I love Persona 5 Royal. I love all these other games that I would prefer to play on a more powerful console, but I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I'm a Sony fan because I played some Sony games. I'm not. I cannot sit here and say that big games are not coming because they simply have already come and will be coming. People are trying to grift for views, and I get it, right? Here we are online. Like, the only way it seems that you can get views these days is to follow the popular opinion. What is the popular opinion about the Switch 2 ever since its reveal? Hate. Right? Because people were like, oh, initially it just looks like another Switch. And it's like, duh, that's what everybody asked for. Then all of a sudden the pricing debacle came out. Mario Kart World was $80. Everyone went back on the train of hating Nintendo, and it just totally flipped. The pendulum switched sides from the Switch being the golden era and now the Switch 2 being the worst thing they've ever produced. We are blind and absolutely dumb if we cannot look in the mirror and say the Switch 2 has a lot going on for it. So yes, I think you're being lied to. I think the mainstream idea on what we are seeing on Twitter and what we are seeing on Reddit boards and all these people complaining about Nintendo, it's simply to just get you and me riled up. or to get people who have just blindly followed or have that opinion themselves to strongly push that narrative forward and to make them even more money. Because negativity sells and engagement gets you money, and money is a heck of a drug. I'm a big fan of 3D Mario. I think it's coming by the end of this year. I could be wrong, but I don't ever want anyone to be able to look me in the eye and say I'm not a Nintendo fan, because what other type of person would buy this amiibo for $45, the Meta Knight and Shadow Star amiibo that is literally larger than my head? What else do you call an idiot who buys the talking flower that is just going to sit on my desk and look at me? Don't worry, these will be unboxed in an upcoming video. Here's one more point I want to address before we wrap up today's video. People have also been talking about the idea of pricing, right? We've talked about that so often, and I don't see that as a huge conundrum right now. I do still see some people saying that it's a big overpriced console. $450 in my opinion is really cheap for the quality, for the type of power you're getting in the Switch 2, especially compared to the Switch being $300 now, what, 2017 to 26, so 9 years later, we see here only $150 more for a 10 times more powerful console with more Nintendo exclusives. That's not at all that bad. But even though I hold that opinion, there are absolutely people out there that cannot afford this. And if you are one of those people that genuinely is complaining about the price, not because you necessarily think it's too expensive, but because you can't personally afford it, I just want to say, first of all, I'm sorry, because I really do wish that you were able to partake in all this excitement. But secondly, I would also ask that you not make this experience worse for everybody else too. Like, of course, there are going to be times when we cannot buy when we want to buy. But if simply that is the only reason you're trying to say something's too expensive rather than looking at it in the context of what's going on, because I'm trying to look at it in the context and say, compared to the PS5, compared to the Xbox, compared to all these other things, it is cheaper and better in my opinion. And if you don't think that, that's fine. But if we're looking at it from a price point standpoint, it's objectively not that expensive and it's objectively not overpriced. I got an interesting comment the other day talking about the Switch 2 being too expensive, that these games were too expensive, and I was talking about the idea of certain games being exclusive to the Switch 2. Someone was saying that I basically was trying to hate on people that couldn't afford this and that I was just being a horrible person for saying that exclusives are important to a console. And my response to that is more so just, console exclusives are important to a console because why would you buy it if it doesn't have exclusives? And also, so many people say that the Nintendo Switch itself is cheap, that it is a cheap way to get into Nintendo, to buy some very classic games, to get a $300 console and $60 games. Like, yeah, that's pretty cheap. So in my opinion, if people who are saying that $300, which by the way, it's $350 for a Switch now, they rose that price yet last year. But even if we're just going with 300, if we just want to say for the sake of argument, $300 is the price point here, what are we talking about in terms of the Switch 2 being too expensive? Because if the same people who say that the Switch is cheap is also saying that the Switch 2 is expensive, cannot wait a few more months to save up for what, only $150 more for the Switch 2? I just don't understand where you're coming from there, because if 300's cheap, which by the way, in the context of most things, $300 is not cheap, but if you want to take it in terms of video games, I would say it's cheap, then there's no logic there. If you're able to save up $300, then just wait and save up $450. Like, I don't understand what that difference is. And then I'm sure there are some people about this pricing stuff that are just saying that because they want it cheaper. And yeah, I want everything to be cheaper, but that's not how everything works. I would love to go and just get free stuff forever, but that's simply not how it's going to happen. So like I said earlier, like I reaffirmed in the middle of this video, and like I will say once more at the end here, you've been lied to. Nintendo grifters have been lying to you through their teeth simply to get people to engage with their content and also to get like-minded individuals to follow along and push their narrative further. I disagree with it. I think objectively it is incorrect to say the Switch 2 has no big games, that it has no big system sellers. It has some great stuff. And what I would honestly say to you is that if you don't think that these games are worth buying a Switch 2 for, and if you don't think that these games are massive, oh boy, you are going to have something in for you when these big games that you're waiting for do get announced, because they're coming and they're going to add to this incredible library of Switch 2 games we already have. A new Zelda, a new Mario, a new Smash will only increase the value of this console, and people who are acting like it has no value right now will have to accept the fact that those games, along with the ones we have now, make this roster of games incredible. Make it undeniably insanely good. In my opinion, it's already great and it can only get better. It literally cannot get worse because these games will come. And if they don't, hold me accountable. Come back and say I was wrong, and I will maybe even make a video admitting I'm wrong and criticizing Nintendo, because you can't go a generation without these big games. You just can't. But for now, we need to remember this thing launched in June. It's not even been a full year yet. So let's give them time to cook, let them cook, because every single month they've given us a brand new big game, or at least some sort of first party exclusive to indulge in. So those are my opinions on the Nintendo Switch 2. That is why I believe you're being lied to, and I hope this video is somewhat of an educational difference for you between these different consoles, and hopefully you've been able to come to a better opinion for yourself. Because that's one thing that I just really dislike about the online narratives right now, is that simply there's only one side or another, or some people thinking this and then everyone has to follow or disagree. Simply come up with your own opinions and be able to critically think. I hope I was able to help you do that on this channel, and I hope you have yourself a phenomenal day. But first, make sure you comment down below telling me all your thoughts and opinions on this topic. I'm really curious to know where you're at, if there's any sort of thing I've missed, something you think that makes me wrong or right. Make sure you like and subscribe if you did enjoy today's video. Make sure you also click that notification bell and join my membership program, a few bucks a month, just to help support me as a content creator and get some cool perks for yourself. Make sure you click on the left side of your screen to see my Switch 2 edition video that I was talking about earlier, and click on the right side of your screen to see my review of Mario Tennis Fever, why I believe it is the best sports game we have ever gotten. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.